Want to welcome you to our section of the morning called Intersection, where we talk about something in culture that is currently going on and then where Jesus intersects with that thing in culture. How many of you heard the one about the guy who joined the dating site for arsonists? Yup, he was sent a lot of matches. I read an article this week about something called BoBots. I'm not sure if you guys have heard about BoBots before. What it is an artificially intelligent chatbot, like we see in that app that's called Replica, where they are creating avenues for romantic relationships between people and AI. This is real. Replica allows a limitless chat experience for free, but requires a payment plan to provide a girlfriend or boyfriend experience. This is crazy, but it is not science fiction. The transhumanism movement has been predicting for decades that sophisticated technology will inevitably merge man with machine. But thinking about actually falling in love with a non-sentient being is still kind of hard for most people to grasp and get their heads around. After all, wouldn't interactions with a bot lack the excitement of building a partnership with a warm-blooded companion? Wouldn't it feel just kind of like you were talking to yourself in a lot of ways? Now, as hard as it may be for most of us to envision, it's important to take note of this. The climate of love and relationships has been changing rapidly since the pandemic. There is a strong emphasis on self-love and longing for safety over spontaneity, and both factors that make the desire for a Romeo robot maybe just a little more out there right now, unfortunately. As I hinted last week, young people are rejecting the first commandment we received from God to grow in numbers, to be fruitful and multiply. It seems like an option to them because it's just a little bit messy and it's a little harder to be all about yourself when you've got these little versions of yourself getting in the way. And so what used to be a primary driver for marriage is now becoming just a little less important. And AI tech, coupled with an emerging narcissistic streak in humanity, could make these relationships between technology and people just a little more common. And although developing a romantic relationship with AI is clearly not the same thing as masturbation, I think that C.S. Lewis's insights into this is so spot on. He says, and I'll put it up on the screen for you, "For me, the real evil of masturbation would be that it takes an appetite which, in lawful use, leads the individual out of himself to complete and correct his own personality in that of another, and finally in children and grandchildren, and turns it back. It sends the man back into the prison of himself, there to keep a harem of imaginary brides. And this harem, once admitted, works against his ever getting out and really uniting with a real woman. For the harem is always accessible, always subservient, calls for no sacrifices or adjustments, and can be endowed with erotic and psychological attractions which no woman can rival." Now, this is the same for men as it is, or same for women as it would be for men. Now, AI will likely eventually be programmed to be even more relationally demanding. It'll nag you just as much as your husband will, and thus be more potentially rewarding. Maybe some who have struggled to find real men or real women in a relationship will see something like Replica as a helpful substitute. But in an era where the harem of imaginary brides or husbands is infinitely available online, in AI, in pornography, in thousands of other services that are offered online, one of the tasks of Christian parents in the room this morning and thousands and others of you who are watching online. But one of the things that we have to be aware of, parents, is to present a real human-to-human relationship that refines us in our character flaws and celebrate that as something that is worthwhile for the next generation. When God said it is not good for man to be alone in Genesis, he didn't create a simulation for Adam to converse with. He didn't create a cover model for Adam to stare at. He created another human being, a woman for him to be with, another complex, confusing, a wonderful human being. And for many people, marriage, if you're called to it, or celibacy, if you're called to that, means deep friendships are still important. And for some of us, we go, but it's just not worth the risk. I've been there before. I've had deep friendships before. It didn't work out for me. I get it. Life's greatest pleasures and worst pains will come from relationships. But even in the hardest times, we learn and are refined. And if we allow ourselves truly intimate relationships in a marriage or a deep friendship, then we grow. We become kinder, gentler, smarter versions of ourselves. In a word, we become more like Jesus. And although we can't know just what any human relationship will actually bring us, it is worth the risk. Why? I love how Soren Kierkegaard puts it. To dare is to lose one's footing momentarily. Not to dare is to lose oneself. Man, I dare you to be in deep relationship. Whether that's in a marriage relationship where you are intimate and deep and truthful to one another, or if you're called to celibacy, find a real friend, a deep friend, somebody who will wrestle with you through the difficulty of life and the difficulty of you. That's where Jesus intersects with culture.